Good morning. I'm Robert Hall, and I'm the Executive Director of Resilience First. Pleasure to welcome you to this Resilience First webinar held in partnership with Intel. By way of introduction, Resilience First was created just over 2 years ago to help build resilience in business communities, whether that be communities defined by geography or by special interest. And for those of you who viewed the opening video, I hope you gained a brief insight on our organization. Since its inception, we have attracted a wide range of major companies as champions, one of those being Intel, as well as a host of affiliated organizations and members to our network, all willing to spread the word of resilience through best practice and learnings. In that vein, and working with Intel, we've created a series of technical workshops, webinars, that are aimed at exploring and showcasing the best of products and services that can help organizations recover from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. The series features presentations from a range of companies in the rail, retail, cargo, and energy sectors. And today, we're focusing on rail. In all these sectors, we are increasingly reliant on technology to help us through the recovery from the virus. Whether it be remote sensing, automated ticketing, storage utilization, or energy conservation, tech solutions can help offset the disruption caused by the pandemic. COVID-19 has certainly accelerated the search for technological as well as managerial solutions, which had previously taken many years. And whether the regulatory, legal, and ethical constraints kept pace is another question which may come up today. I invite the assembled audience to ask questions to the speakers throughout the session by posting short written questions in the chat box to the right of your screen. I'm sure the chair will pick up as many of those as she can as we progress through the webinar. And I should add that all the speakers' bios are in your joining instructions. So I will now hand over the chair for this session to Ellie Wood, who is Account Executive for Transportation at Intel. And she will introduce the topic and the excellent speakers who have given up their valuable time today to be with us. Ellie, the virtual floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks ever so much, Robert. And thank you all for joining this, the first of 4 webinars that we're running this week, as mentioned, covering rail, retail, cargo, and energy. Well, who would have believed as we started 2020 that transportation would lose 90 to 95% of their business? COVID-19 has been had a huge effect on us all, both personally and professionally, and really has radically changed the way that we work both now and in the future. Intel's priority has always been the health and safety of our employees, our customers, and our partners, while keeping our business up and running to support you and the communities we operate in. To support these efforts, Intel has donated 10 million to the COVID-19 Relief Fund and also 40 million towards tech initiatives, supporting access to technology, such as speeding up scientific research, patient care, and access to online learning for students. And that's really why we're running these seminars and bringing them to you this week, enabling you to access technology partners with tried and tested innovative solutions to help you meet the new ways of working. So with that, I'll quickly run through the agenda so we can get started. So starting with our keynote speaker, David Clarke, Technical Director of the Rail Industry Association. David is a chartered engineer and a fellow of the Institute of Civil Engineers with over 30 years rail industry experience. After that, we'll have a Q&A with David, and as mentioned before, please submit your questions via chat. We'll then have all 3 innovation presentations together, starting with Christian Marez, Senior Business Development Manager at ADLink, followed by Dr. Spincer CEO of Gorilla Technologies, and finally Daren Wood, Vision Director of Resonate. This will be followed by a panel Q&A, including our keynote speaker, David Clarke. Once again, please submit your questions via chat. I will then summarize and close. So with that, I'll pass over to David. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. Good morning. Could we have the slides up, please?
Yep.
Right. Okay, a little bit of a preview of my slides. I'll go through them in the correct direction in a minute. Robert, we've lost the slides again. Would you mind putting them up? Thank you. Yep, that's excellent. Okay. Would you try again, please? Okay, thank you very much. Right, good morning, everybody. So as Ellie's already said, I'm the Technical Director at the Railway Industry Association. We're the trade association for the railway supply chain. So just to put in context what it is we do, this is trying to simplify what is quite a complex industry structure. So we have governmental bodies like Department for Transport, Transport Scotland and Transport for Wales, who specify their requirements for train services and infrastructure on the national network. So the national network is the network that, back in the day was the British Railway network. On top of that, there's also the local networks, the most obvious example of which is the one in London, run by Transport for London. So each of those governmental bodies then have typically arm's length or franchised organisations which deliver the train service on their behalf. And that in the national network is split between the train operators, the so-called TOCs, train operating companies, and Network Rail as the infrastructure manager. On local networks, very often those two things are combined in what's termed a vertically integrated organisation, but it varies a little bit. So, for example, London Underground have some concessions with private operators, for example, on London Overground and on the Crossrail route when it opens. So the RIA, the Railway Industry Association, support all of that through the supply chain. And our members are the consultants, contractors, system integrators, manufacturers, and the SMEs that deliver for those bodies. So that's the background to the rail industry. But what about coronavirus? Well, as an industry, I think we're very proud that we did indeed keep the nation moving. There was a cross-industry response coordinated by the Joint Executive Oversight Team, which was jointly chaired by representatives of the train operators and Network Rail, senior level representatives. That had been created following the problems with the May 2018 timetable change, which I think are well documented. But that new regime, that new crisis management regime, proved its worth in the coronavirus crisis. Government reacted very quickly, recognising that revenue was going to fall and indeed collapse, and they took the revenue and cost risk from the train operators by putting in place for 6 months what were termed emergency measures agreements, and therefore the industry was able to maintain the service. Initially, government advice was to only use public transport for essential travel, so the timetable was initially significantly reduced, but it's been stepped up twice, and there's another step up coming in September, which will almost bring us back to a normal service. As you might expect, performance has improved with fewer trains running, but that gives us a lesson for the future. In a question for us, as I'll allude to later, is do we come back with a more robust timetable? One of the big success stories has been the growth in freight during the lockdown period, where in the interest of keeping vital goods moving, and indeed freight has actually increased its the amount of trains it's been running. And for instance, trains were run through from Spain, bringing perishable goods and so forth on refrigerated trains from Spain. And fair play to the government. We've had very good ministerial engagement as an industry throughout this process. But as Ellie alluded to, we've had a collapse in demand for public transport. And this is the graph over time for both National Rail and TfL, the Tube. So at the worst point, we were 96% down. Now we're only 87% down, although it is slowly improving. And that is costing the nation about £900 million a month, and clearly that's not sustainable. And I draw attention here that, and it may be due to the government advice, that car usage has recovered very well. It's back to only 20% down, but public transport, and particularly in this instance, and buses aren't much different, but in this instance, rail, remain 80% down. And clearly that's a significant problem. So one of the key steps that the industry recognises is that we need to rebuild public confidence in the safety of using the railway. And if we do that successfully, then we'll rebuild revenue. So since the beginning of July, the industry has been talking about a safer travel pledge, about maximising space, boosting cleaning, putting hygiene products on the train, etc., to support and improving information. And over the weekend, the government starting on Friday, the government have re-emphasised that it is now safe to travel by train, and are encouraging us to get back to work as a nation. So what does that look like? As I say, government's encouraging us all to return to work where it's safe to do so. There's a timetable. There have been timetable step-ups, lots of enhanced cleaning, masks and social distancing being the norm or the requirement on trains. But of course, there's changed working patterns. People are getting much more used to working from home. And on the right-hand side, there's an example of some of the measures one train operator, in this case Northern Trains, are implementing, which gives you an idea of the scale of the activity in order to make our trains safe to use. I think, however, for the longer term, the crisis has given us a lot to think about. And I think we've become more agile. For example, with timetabling would normally take 12 or 14 weeks to develop a new timetable. And we've been developing new timetables in a couple of weeks because, frankly, we've had to. I think we will be able to accelerate some of the things that we've wanted to do anyway. We've made a significant move towards contactless payment. Could we see the end of the orange magstripe cardboard ticket? That's certainly quite possible. And we're looking to introduce flexible season tickets and carnet type tickets, recognizing the change in traveling patterns, that commuting will not necessarily be a 5-day a week activity anymore. I think there's already during the crisis, we've seen data being opened up, and we'd like to see an acceleration of open data and the customer value adding initiatives that can drive. I think there'll definitely be an acceleration of our decarbonisation, digitalisation plans, and there'll obviously be some thinking to be factored into future rolling stock design. So what I've just described is the train operating response, but of course you can't run a railway without infrastructure. And on the national network, Network Rail are the infrastructure managers I've already alluded to, and they have been excellent throughout the crisis. Credit where credit's due. They have supported the supply chain. They've supported the nation in keeping trains running. They've continued all essential work on the railway, which is important so that we don't build up a backlog of work that then needs to be remedied when we're trying to run a full service again. As I say, they supported the supply chain. They brought in and still have in place immediate payment arrangements. There is an arcane thing called PPN 0220, which is Cabinet Office advice about supporting suppliers in difficulty, and Network Rail have applied that fully, and our members are appreciative of that. And there's been a lot of cross-industry collaboration around health and safety, sharing and developing best practice, and also a lot of collaboration around pipeline, both during the coronavirus period and also looking to the pipeline as we come out of coronavirus in order that businesses working in the rail industry can have confidence in their recovery and not have to take action on potentially downsizing their organizations for the absence of clarity. Indeed, Network Rail have even delivered additional work working with their supply chain. An example would be the Kilsby Tunnel on the West Coast Main Line, which is an extremely difficult, it's on the main line. It's a tunnel that is very difficult to work in and very difficult to get access to work in. And with 9 days notice, taking the opportunity of fewer trains being running, Avanti West Coast and Network Rail agreed a 2-week blockade to allow a real blitz of work to be undertaken. And that was planned, which is pretty much unprecedented at 9 days notice, which just shows how agile the industry can be when the opportunity and need arises. Other infrastructure companies, the light rail and metro operators, were constrained because they didn't have access to emergency funding until a fair way through the process, and therefore they were less able to support in quite the same way as Network Rail were doing so. Looking forward, government are calling for shovel-ready projects, and Network Rail and the industry are working together under Project Speed to identify a raft of shovel-ready projects to bring forward to accelerate us out of the coronavirus crisis. And there's a very strong push towards green growth, which is why I say that decarbonisation and digitalisation of the railway is likely to accelerate. How have the supply chain responded to the situation? Well, if I talk about two generic parts of the supply chain, the infrastructure suppliers on the left, they continued working under Network Rail's support. And as I said, there was a lot of collaboration around health and safety best practice. We introduced things like top left, COVID marshals, so people to work on site and monitor whether people were maintaining social distancing. And the other two photographs illustrate social distancing being practiced during line-side works. And we're very proud that the workforce responded very effectively to adopting those measures and very pragmatically and very safety consciously carried on working. On the right-hand side, there's some examples from the rail manufacturing sector. Some of those businesses initially closed down for a couple of weeks while they evaluated what they needed to do in order to come back operating in a safe manner. And within a couple of weeks after the lockdown commenced, the vast majority of the major rail manufacturing businesses were back at work, having put in place effective measures. And you see some examples there on those photographs. But it wasn't all plain sailing. This was a survey that RIA undertook in April, only a few weeks into the crisis. And as you can see at that, 53.5% of the RIA membership were saying they had up to 40% of their operations suspended. As I say, it did improve a little bit later on, but that was also reflected in a high number of people being furloughed because whilst essential work was continued and discretionary work was severely curtailed. Slightly later, this survey in May, which was a pretty representative survey, a good cross-section of industry and 440 responses, which is pretty good for a survey of this nature, identified that the top three areas of concern for the supply chain were sufficient cash flow, visibility of a pipeline of work, and accelerated government investment in publicly funded projects. And they were very much looking forward to the next stage of survival and recovery. So that led the authors of that survey, the Rail Supply Group, which RIA is a member of, to identify three priorities for the best possible recovery from the current crisis. They were to improve pipeline visibility, to simplify access to data. So this is the open data point I was making before, and to change and improve railway access arrangements. So just to wrap up, looking forward, it's undoubtedly the case that coronavirus will have a long-lasting effect on the rail industry, and some of those effects will be positive because we coped well, we never stopped, and I believe we'll be even better prepared for a future crisis. And as I've alluded to, I think we were agile during the crisis, and that gives us the opportunity, I think, to be more agile in the future. We now need to focus on rebuilding customer confidence and therefore revenue, increasing productivity, including through better pipeline visibility and increased access, which are two of those rail supply group asks. And the term in the industry is about building back better. So that's, for example, as I alluded to before, there's been a performance gain in train operations. We've been running much more to time. So now the question is, do we come back with a more deliverable timetable? Have we been over ambitious in the past, trying to pack the timetable too much, resulting in poor performance? As I say, we can accelerate our plans for open data, for flexible ticketing, for decarbonisation and digitalisation. I think also we'll see increased emphasis in our R&D programmes, and our design of rolling stock and infrastructure will be much more emphasising biosecurity. So we'll be thinking about things like viral resistant coatings, etc., etc. And clearly we'd hope to play our part in the wider economic recovery, both with running trains to get people to work and to carry goods and to stimulate the leisure economy, but also in our own actions around building, constructing and improving the railway. So if I can hand back now to Ellie and Robert for the Q&A. Thank you.
Lovely. Thanks ever so much, David. Really appreciate that. So I guess one of the areas you mentioned was freight. Do you see that kind of reducing down as people go back to work, or or do you think that will continue to grow? Because I know it was an area that started to decrease over time before the COVID-19.
Yeah, good question. I mean, freight has changed in nature in recent years. So, for example, bulk freight, like coal in particular, has reduced dramatically as power stations have moved to decarbonise. But that has, to a significant extent, been taken up by intermodal goods. And it's not surprising, it's that area that we saw a big growth in during the coronavirus crisis. So I'd like to think that transport operators, having got used to using rail and seeing that it can perform for them, and particularly as I gave the example of the long distance trains introduced from Spain, I'd like to think that would be retained, because not only is it proven its capability, but also its lower carbon outcome. So I'd like to see that continue.
Yeah, no, of course. I think we all would. I guess the other question from myself is about return to London. So, there's lots of it in the news that people won't come back to London, work in the offices like they did. I think there will be a percentage. How do you think that will affect the railways?
Well, I think we simply don't know yet, and we'll see, I think, over the coming weeks as the government encourage people to start going back to their offices. And I can only, as an example, we're an SME based in London, and at the moment we're reopening the office, and we're saying to people, if you're comfortable to do so, or it's better for you to do so, please come into the office, but we're not enforcing it. And so I think, whether we're typical or not remains to be seen. But I think gradually the offices will start to reopen, and therefore patronage will build up on the railways. But I think all the pundits are saying that we won't see a return to the same level of 5-day-a-week commuting for quite a while. if ever, and hence the rail industry accelerating its moves to simplify ticketing and bring in things like flexible season tickets and carnets, in order that people can adapt to their new flexible way of working.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's definitely what we've seen when we've been talking to people, that actually 2 or 3 days in the office instead of the full 5 days. So actually reducing those kind of costs and making it more flexible would be brilliant. There are a couple of questions in the chat. Can you please expand on a little on the digital plans that will be accelerated?
Okay, well, we as an industry, we're working on 2 particular areas. So digital railway, which means digital signalling. So that's we've as an industry, we've developed a strategy and a plan in the last 6 months to start rolling out that new type of signalling over the coming years, and particularly ramping it up in the 2024 to 2029 period to volumes that are pretty much unprecedented in the UK, because we have to deal with, there is a backlog of renewal of signalling, because we've been waiting for the new technology. The new technology is now in place, so now we need to deal with that backlog. But that will bring, that will bring other benefits. There's potential performance improvement benefits out of that. It also, frankly, creates a volume of work for the industry that will allow us to build the ability to really deliver more efficiently. On decarbonisation, the industry's been working on a decarbonisation plan, and that will be published, or it'll be completed in interim form at the end of this month, and that will, in simple terms, draw the map of the network which would need electrifying if you were to achieve net zero carbon by 2050, and the wouldn't make a case for electrifying, and those would be the places that you would be thinking about deploying zero carbon rolling stock. So we, by the end of the month, we'll have an interim plan in place that will be crystallised by the end of the year. That'll be a recommendation to government from which we expect decisions to flow. Our main point with both digitalisation and decarbonisation is the only question is how much. It's not whether. So the assumption that we're going to be doing both of those things, then let's not wait for to start. So let's get started now, because that keeps existing teams in being and gives them work and allows them to ramp up to the higher volumes that we expect in the future, and is also part of the coronavirus recovery.
Yeah, brilliant. So very quickly, just one last question, and thank you for that, is how do you think we compare with other countries on our response?
We've been looking at other countries quite closely. So we've been, trying to share best practice and steal with pride, as they say. I think we have performed as well as any of the European railways that we've been monitoring. We've taken their best practice; they've taken ours.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Okay, well, thank you, David. Thanks ever so much, and
you're very welcome.
Join us in the panel at the end of the next presentations.
Look forward to it. Yeah,
brilliant, lovely. So I'm going to hand over now to Christian Marez from ADLink.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yep, it's all yours, Christian.
Oh, okay, but I don't see the slide. I can't see the slides.
Okay, there you are.
There it goes. Okay. Can you move on the slide for me? Because it doesn't work on my side. Oh, it does, sorry. Okay, I'm Christian Marez from ADLink Technology. The first slide is about who we are. ADLink is a Taiwanese-based company. It's been founded almost 30 years ago. Revenue is there, and we got 2 manufacturing centers for a total of 6 and 70 lines, 4 in Shanghai and 2 in Taipei. Where we are a global company, having several offices and R&D center across USA, Europe, China, Taipei, of course, and also Japan. So what I'm going to introduce very briefly is the current portfolio we have for the railway. So that's where we are in the application in the railway: train control, rail signaling, automation, and digitalization. I mean, the scope of today is going to be digitalization. That's where we can have some COVID-19 related application. The first product I'm showing up is the AVA 5500, which is equipped with an Intel i7 quad core. And I will not mention, but we got NVIDIA on this one. This box is able to enable the AI on the ADH. This is made for the onboard, being certified 50155. So it means you can onboard this device on train, on tramway, on subway, without adding any kind of testing. This is already tested. We also offer a large entry level of voltage, as well as different features that we'll not go into today. We also have some what we call DMI, driver machine interface. This is for the device which is run on the Intel Apollo Lake. This is a very common device, but again, this is certified to be onboarded with the 50155 certification. So this is an off-the-shelf product you can use and put on the train. Again, because this is certified, you got a large range of input power, you got extended temperature range, some IP functions for that, IP65 to IP20. In terms of software, this is basically Linux and Windows, and we got different size of panels. We have a third product, which is the DCS. This is a data recorder, or we can also call it a gateway system. This is a full Intel design based on a Apollo Lake Atom with different features that are needed into a train. When I say train, it can be tramway, it can be also metro. This is the entry level. If you compare to the AVA, this one doesn't have any AI related functions. And now we are developing now 2 new products that use for COVID-19 applications. The first one is an entry level PC box, because that's a PC box, that will be able to handle the Intel VPU, the Myriad, and tomorrow the King Bay, with different benefits that are the low power, the 10 years life cycle, and that can make some video analysis. This is not a machine that you're going to be used for deep learning, but it can be used for video analysis, just like simple fast mass dissection, counting passenger. With some application, we can also measure the social distancing. So we intend to release this box Q4 this year, and we already have some engagement for major train builders to use this box into trains, because the COVID-19 is going to be last for long. Again, this will be certified 50155 to be boarded on train. We also we had that in the roadmap for a long time, but we push it very fast now. This is a neon, this is a camera. We call that vision at the edge. So that's more or less the same concept as the box, but that's a camera. So you have inside the Intel meter you have today. We may have to have a King Bay tomorrow directly embedded in the camera. For the system I previously showed you in this one, we are using OpenVINO, the Intel reference platform for the prototyping. This kind of application to COVID-19 related are the simple mass detections and counting passengers on board. This is the application we can see today. And we also, that's a simple slide, we also propose to our customer to OEM services, starting from very light change to fully custom design. So this is something we are able to propose based on our product or based on our building blocks. And the idea is to accelerate the time to market for our biggest customers.
Thank you.
And this is it from my side.
Oh, that's lovely. Thanks ever so much, Christian. And we'll get a chance to ask questions at the end of the rest of the presentations.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So now we have Dr. Spincer from Gorilla Technologies.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Ellie, thank you. If you can. Okay, all right, here is it. I'm the founder and also the CEO for Gorilla Technology. And I think we can start in moving the slide. Gorilla founded in 2001. We have about 270 people focusing on the software, especially for AI apply to computer vision and also network intelligence, which means cybersecurity. And then we're very, very close to many big investors like Dell EMC, Intel, SBI, and so forth. We have a global operation besides China. And we are kind of an ISV to start the first version of OpenVINO with Intel back in 2017, and then start from alpha. And then we work together on the beta version and all the way until today. And so our business is pretty much, we wanted to enable all the AI-based division within a secure network environment, which means we want to make sure the data is secure, data integrity, network security, and then protect the data from overspec, especially when AI is applied on a computer vision. I think everybody's thinking about facial recognition, vehicle detection, that kind of stuff. But how do you protect the privacy within a network environment when you transfer from digital information to one end to another? So the mission is to make the AI solution deployment easy for all vertical equipped with AI lifecycle software. So for AI lifecycle, which means we do the inference at front from the edge, we call the edge AI, while we do the sampling at edge, and then to make sure we can provide a custom AI network services for all kinds of different verticals and different scenario. For example, today we're going to talk about the railway, and then we cover all different kind of vertical. On the next page, we can see. So this is what we cover from the technology. Will cover edge AI, but also video intelligence, cover from people, vehicle, and then object detection, classification, behavior analysis, all the way to statistic analysis, which we will use for COVID-19 post-pandemic comeback solution. I think we're going to share the video and also all kinds of related to information. So for here, for example, social distancing, mask wearing, frontline workers' health, remote work, and also GDPR compliance. And so if we look back, no, let's go back to another page, please. Yeah, okay. So especially when we're looking into the network intelligence, that's something we're going to cover also today. And then I think Debbie mentioned about open data, which means how do you get this data be open, but while you can still maintain the security. I think those are the key issues we've been facing in the last couple of years, and especially during this post-pandemic. I'm based in Taipei. As everybody probably know, Taiwan has done a good job on the coronavirus content, and we kind of have minimized the confirmed cases. We start very, very early from last December to shut down the airport connection from China, and then start deploy the mask detection, and then with the CDC from airport all the way to the railway. So the next one, we will see, this is how we did in different locations today, because we talk about a railway. This is where mask protectors and no mask detection during the train station. So we will talk about that in the real video, and also crowd density alert will immediately trigger. But another thing is, I think Debbie and all the people have been talking about how do we solve the problem, because the working pattern has been changed. A lot of people have been working at home remotely, where we wanted to create a digitalization, but still you want to maintain everything working and then keep our employees safe. That's my duty, to keep my 207 people employee around the world be safe. So we're using something for facial recognition, physical detection on the mask or without a mask, while we are looking also how to protect ourselves even when they our employee work remotely, but we still want to make sure our system is secure. So we use facial recognition with or without a mask, because if somebody working at the coffee shop, he still have to work. He has to have to cover with the mask. We want to know who that is. It's our employee, and they can knock on the network. So we use remote work tool we call facial recognition and MOTP, which means generating mobile one-time password. So this is another thing we talk about: GDPR compliance and data protection. We use 128-bit data encryption for privacy protection, but also we don't store any facial image or identity information. We use hash data, and then on the edge, we provide a security solution to protect against the malware, cyber threat, and attacks from the connected devices. Okay, so we stop this, and while we are preparing the video, so this video has been taken in a real scenario inside the train station. So it takes a few minutes. Okay, here we go. So how do we do the preventive measure during the railway? Here we use the crowd detection and the density alert to maintain the social distance enforcement, because that enforcement has been enforced by the government a long time ago. And then also during the shop, during the coffee break, or during any places people might have to stop there and gathering, we want to make sure the social distance is maintained, and also the crowding has been detected. Another thing is, of course, everybody's talking about a mask. You can see from here, from entrance all the way to the area in the railway. We want to make sure the mask has been worn such that everybody is protected. So people still don't like to wear masks sometimes, especially during a very hot season, but we still can manage it pretty well until now. And to maintain the workers, make sure they can comply with the mask wearing, but at the same time, we want to make sure contactless. So we use facial recognition, and we develop very fast the facial recognition with mask on. And then this one talking about a remote log on from your PC, but using your mobile, and then facial recognition with your MAC address and everything. Make sure you got one-time password and you log on. We know who you are, and then we make sure you enter the right system with the protected data. This is what we do on the back end. At the same time, when we do the AI at the front, we want to make sure our edge is secure, everything inside the network is secure. If anything we find out is has suspicious behavior, we kind of isolate that network connection and make sure everything is working properly, because we want to make sure the system working properly, the employee is protected, but while our client is protected. I think this has been a good experience I'd like to share with everybody. So happy to get back to Ellie.
Thank you ever so much. And I know it's really difficult to get it all into 5 minutes. So appreciate that. And hopefully we can go through a bit more in questions. So quickly over to Daren. Thank you.
Okay, good morning. Hey, so I'm Daren Wood, the Vision Director at Resonate. We're a UK-based mid-sized company specialising in traffic management technology and signalling control technology to the railways. Should be seeing my slides or a video very soon. While we're waiting for that, what we essentially do on the traffic management side is to take a whole host of data from the railway, from the operation, looking at timetables. Here we go. So looking at timetables, looking at train movements, looking at various aspects of how the operation's playing out. And this video that we're straight into would show a little bit of the technology as it's running, different aspects of how we're using information to predict what's likely to happen. This is a particular thing, it's not very particularly clear to see on there, but this is looking at how we can predict trouble spots that are arising 2 to 3 sort of hours ahead, where performance may be deteriorating. And here what we're looking at is a train graph, an animation of the train graph. It's essentially a train time distance graph, sorry, with every line representing a service. And this is constantly predicting and forecasting what's likely to happen. We can do that for the stations as well. What we'll see here is a view of Paddington Station in London, where this technology is running. And it's constantly predicting each block here is where a particular train is occupying or due to occupy a platform. The different colours that start appearing are flagging up warnings where we've got potential problems in service. As we see here, back again on the train graph, there's lots of things it's doing over on the right-hand side here. I'm pointing, I'm not sure whether you can detect what I'm pointing at. But you've got business performance measures being calculated as well. So it's not just about individual services, but how can operators intervene to deliver a better customer service, to align to the business needs and the customer needs. The view there of Liverpool Street, pre-pandemic, that particular slide. Okay, if we can move on to the slides, please. Should appear any second. So the slide's about to appear, are they? Here we go. Right, okay. So I've done this in slightly sort of reverse order, but this highlights some of the data that we're taking. So the simulation that you've just seen is taking all that data in from trackside, timetables, train movements, and looking to predict where potential problems are occurring. So this system we deployed just over 2 years ago. It was first in the UK and landed during a time of massive change on the railway, particularly that section of the railway, the lines running out of Paddington. There's a new fleet being rolled out, coming towards the end of a massive electrification programme, and new operators appearing on the line as well. So we had Transport for London, through one of their concessions, started to run one of the lines. This forecast there's a lot of data behind it, but predicting what we expected would have happened if there weren't any interventions of the sort we just talked about, including our technology being deployed. Then what we actually saw through the first few months when we went live was a massive improvement, delivered by a number of different changes happening together, but a massive improvement in the overall delivery on that line. And disruption continues. You've seen this graph earlier as well. David used the same graph, I think, with massive disruption happening. And as David mentioned, there's been a number of different timetable changes that have happened during these last few months. something that the railways struggled with historically, and it was only a couple of years ago when the delivery of timetables was all over the news. But it's been very effective this time round, and one of the things is about getting data to the places, or the information to the places where it's really needed. And formerly, before our system came into this route, a lot of the data moves around either in systems or on paper or phone calls, and sometimes phone calls that you never quite get the time to make. By bringing it together and delivering it to the point of need, it all helps with the management of change in, as David mentioned again, in much more agile timescales than the railway's done before. So just briefly, I've only got a few minutes, so giving you a quick overview of what our technology is, but also just a few thoughts on how to design technology to support resilient operations. The one in the bottom right is what I just talked about, really, making sure data is available, doing the simple things well, communicating well, so that information is there so people know what they should be doing. Just to touch briefly on the others, evolutionary build. We work very closely and collaboratively with Network Rail, in this case, to deliver the system, concentrating on the sort of just enough functionality to deliver that first phase of benefits, but then set up the contractual mechanisms that allowed us to continually evolve that, responding to the operation, the changes in the operation, and the changes in the way people think and start using the technology as well. I think the digital giants, cloud, there's lots of evidence around how the use of cloud has supported more resilient, more responsive actions. And I think particularly being freed, the railways delivered a lot of technology that sits in control centres, sits in the railway domain, but being freed from that, the ability to work from anywhere has been a massive improvement, a massive change. And just a final point, data. I'm a big fan of data science. What's happened over the last few weeks has caused us to challenge a lot of the models that we had and the assumptions that they were built on and the data that they were trained on. But still, not to give up on this. There's still a lot of good data, and the more we use it, the more we're able to adapt and respond quickly and learn what's happening and learn about the impact of our changes. So hopefully a very brief run through there of some of the technology we deliver, and just a few thoughts on how to build technology to support more resilient operation.
Thanks, Daren. Really appreciate that. So we're going to open it up, if you want to all open up your videos, to a few questions, including David Clarke, who's our keynote speaker. And there's a really interesting one, and actually there's two kind of runs in it, and I think this is probably for you, David. Could you kindly provide an example of how we as a rail have responded well to current crisis and reduced passenger demand, and the context of sharing best data with other countries? Not sure Europe has been so harsh with their messaging, and I think there's an additional question further up saying, is our railways, we made it seem like a day trip to Chernobyl. So, have we been overcautious? What do you think the effect on those?
Well, it's not for me to comment on, whether the government have got their advice right or not, but I would draw attention that, their advice is being, probably particularly detrimental to public transport. And so they've been advising people to use other forms of transport, which in other countries we've seen similar similar advice. And similar reductions in traffic. But more recently, for example, in France, the traffic volumes, I think, have started to increase as they've relaxed the advice against using trains. And as in all, right back at the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic, some of the European countries were several weeks ahead of the UK, and that's still true. So several weeks ago, they were relaxing relaxing restrictions on public transport, and it's starting to pick up. So one would hope that exactly the same will happen in the UK in the coming weeks as that advice is just being relaxed.
Yeah. And I guess you mentioned new ticketing and fare systems. or new fare systems anyway, flexibility in those fare systems. Do you think there's other technology? Do you think we need to promote technology more in the railways to get people back?
Yes. Well, we always need to promote technology more in the railways, but that's not particularly a coronavirus-driven thing. The railways have been quite slow sometimes to adopt technology, and that's because very often they're rather busy running a service day out. The upside of the current crisis, as I've alluded to, and Daren and the other speakers have alluded to, is it's given us a chance to, or it's frankly forced us into a position where we've had to do some of the things that we've intended to do for a long time. So it's forced us to accelerate.
And I guess all of you on the panel are selling globally to rail companies. What do you think's working well? What kind of conversations are you having that's really making a difference? What technology are people putting in that's building that confidence really? Maybe Dr. Ko?
Yeah, I think I can share our experience over here. We've been working with the CDC from the first day when Taiwan CDC has discovered the COVID-19 back in December. So we are very, very soon to be asked to working with them, and then also together with the airport and train bureau to start talking about how to get this this regulation enforced, and then where we can deploy the new technology into it. So the mask wearing was the mandate at the beginning of the year, and then the social distance was not there yet, but thermal measuring, temperature measuring was out already. So we're kind of in a very rush to develop the technology on computer vision for mask detection, but where they want to do contact tracing because they want to make sure the confirmed cases will be quarantined and not going out. So it's very, very human labor intensive job to keep everybody at home or at a quarantine hotel. Is not easy. So the technology has been applied very, very fast to see, okay, if we have 100 different confirmed cases, can we apply that confirmed cases as the target in the different traffic hub? But where we still can maintain the privacy, because human right over here is very, very strong. Then the voices there say, okay, you cannot take that shot, you cannot do. So we have to kind of use the technology to comply with the regulation, while we want to comply with the privacy law and the constitution. So that's something I've been encountering not only in Taiwan. Right now we're working with the CDC and the NCID in Singapore. We're working with Thailand, we're working with Japan Railway, and then to see how do we apply this different technology using AJI at front, and then to comply with their regulation where we wanted to feed their environment on a different scenario. So I think another thing is the self-services technology has been widely adopted, even in the train station, the vending machine, the ticketing, and then even the sanitization for the men's room, for the toilet, that kind of stuff, because no one wanted to touch anything, right? So all kinds of stuff has been raised up to see, okay, how do we apply this kind of technology? Why there's a constraint? They don't want to apply new infrastructure. They still want to use the same video cameras, the same infrastructures, and then can fastly deploy the new technology to generate the data, and then while they can look into the data and then provide open data, as what just Debbie said. Open data is a very, very fast growing concept, but how do you provide the right data and then at the right moment to a different person? That's a challenge, but I think all kinds of technology has been driven daily basis. We're still working with the CDC, with the different bureau, continuously talking about the post-pandemic, especially the second wave or third wave is coming.
Sure. Thank you. And I guess, it's a real difficult one. And one of the questions I guess we got, and we're just about to run out of time, is how social distancing can really be managed in rush hour commuter trains. And I think that is a really interesting one kind of moving forward. I don't know what your thoughts are quickly on that. Anybody?
Yeah, okay. I can give a very, very fast. At the beginning, social distance has been just a concept. So we come out of something that's crowd detection, but very soon the healthcare or the CDC come out and say, okay, we want just exactly 2 meters. And then so we have to develop some technology to see the exact 2 meter, but video is only like 2D. So it's really hard to see the 2D converting into 3D to measure the distance, but the technology can be evolved. So we use a different technology. I think it's a stream we're gonna deploy that. But I think other innovator also can have other solutions. That's from my point of view. We can already pretty much deliver that technology for social distancing in the exact meters. We tested in a very in a premises. I think the distance. The tolerance will be cut on less than 1%, the error rate.
Yeah. And I think, as we kind of all go back to work, I think we're going to see these, be tried and tested quite a lot. So thank you ever so much, everyone, for your time today, and hope you found this session really useful. Intel is committed to support you by bringing innovation to try and hit some of these everyday business problems. We also have a RHEL and COVID-19 ebook that's available to you all. If you'd like a copy of these or any further information from anyone else, from anybody on these sessions, then please don't hesitate to contact me. But thank you again. Thank you for attending, and hope you have a great week. Thank you.
And on behalf of Resilience First, on behalf of Resilience First and Intel and all the participants, I'd like to express our sincere thanks to the speakers and Chair for the excellent contributions today. We will be circulating a short summary, and I hope you can join us again for our next webinar, which will take place on Wednesday, which will be on the retail sector. Thank you very much and have a good week. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.